Welcome, seekers of stories, to Mythic Mundi. Today, we journey back to the Age of Heroes, a time of bronze armor, fickle gods, and monsters that lurked just beyond the firelight. We are not telling the story of the strongest hero, like Achilles, or the most powerful, like Heracles. We are telling the story of the cleverest. He was a king, a general, a husband, and a father, but above all, he was a survivor. His name was Odysseus, King of Ithaca, and his story is one of the greatest ever told, a tale of war, of wandering, and the unshakable desire to return home. This is not just a story of adventure, it's a story about the human condition, about wit triumphing over brute force, about the cost of war, and the trials that forge a legend.
Our story begins not on a stormy sea, but on a peaceful island kingdom, Ithaca. Odysseus was its king, known more for his sharp mind and silver tongue than for his love of battle. He was happily married to his brilliant wife Penelope and a new father to his son Telemachus. His life was one of order and intellect. But fate, as it often does in Greek myth, had other plans. Far across the Aegean, a Trojan prince named Paris had taken Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. An oath sworn years before by all of Helen's suitors was called due. Every king, including Odysseus, was bound to sail for Troy and bring her back. Odysseus wanted no part in it. This was not his fight. To avoid the war, he famously pretended to be mad. When the Greek commanders arrived to collect him, they found the great king plowing his fields with an ox and a donkey yoked together, sowing salt into his own land. It was a perfect picture of insanity. But one of the commanders, Polyphemus, was as clever as Odysseus. To test the king's madness, he placed the infant Telemachus directly in the path of the plow. Odysseus, his ruse broken, instantly swerved to save his son. His sanity was exposed. Bound by his honor and his broken trick, the king of Ithaca had to leave his wife and child for a war he never wanted. For 10 long years, the greatest army of the age laid siege to the impenetrable walls of Troy. Odysseus was not their greatest fighter, that was Achilles. He was not their supreme commander, that was Agamemnon. He was their strategist, he was the mind of the Achaean army. When the Greeks' morale wavered, it was Odysseus who rallied them. When Achilles and Agamemnon's feud threatened to tear the army apart, it was Odysseus who mediated. He was the diplomat sent on dangerous missions, the spy who slipped into the city, the voice of reason in the war council. He understood that this war would not be won by strength alone. It had to be won by cunning. And for 10 years, it wasn't. The walls stood firm. The Trojans, led by the noble Hector, fought bravely. The Greeks were exhausted, homesick, and grieving their dead, including the great Achilles himself. The war had reached a bitter stalemate. Then, Odysseus had his greatest idea, an idea born not of rage, but of intellect, an idea so bold, so deceptive, that it would echo through history forever. "We cannot break the walls," he might have said to the council, "so we must be invited inside." The plan was audacious. The Greeks would pretend to give up. They would build a peace offering to the gods, specifically Athena, for a safe voyage home. This offering would be a colossal horse, built of wood, beautiful and massive. And inside its hollow belly, the best soldiers of the Greek army, led by Odysseus himself, would hide. The rest of the army would burn their camps, board their ships, and sail away. Or rather, pretend to sail away, hiding just beyond the nearest island. one man, Sinon, would be left behind to spin a tale. The Trojans awoke to a silent beach. The Greek army was gone. In their place stood the magnificent wooden horse. They were victorious. As they celebrated, they found Sinon, who played his part perfectly. He claimed to have deserted the cruel Greeks and told them the horse was a sacred offering. He claimed the Greeks had made it so large precisely so the Trojans couldn't bring it into their city, fearing that if they did, Troy would become invincible, blessed by Athena herself. Torn between caution and pride, the Trojans made their fatal choice. Against the warnings of their priest Laocoon and the prophetess Cassandra, they tore down a section of their own unbreakable walls and wheeled the horse, their own doom, into the heart of their city. That night, Troy feasted. They celebrated their victory, their deliverance from a decade of war. And when the city finally slept, heavy with wine and relief, the trap was sprung. In the darkness, a panel in the horse slid open. Odysseus and his men rappelled down. They were a knife in the dark. They ran to the gates, cut down the sleeping guards, and opened the city to the full might of the Greek army, which had sailed back under the cover of night. What followed was not a battle, but a sack. The city that had stood for 10 years fell in a single night of terror and fire. Odysseus, the man of intellect, had used that intellect to unleash a terrible destruction. The war was over. The Greeks had won. Helen was reclaimed. But for the heroes who had participated, the victory was hollow. They had angered the gods with their brutality and their pride. And for Odysseus, the man who conceived the victory, the gods' judgment would be the most severe. He had won the war for the Greeks, but he had lost his way home. His 10-year war was over. His 10-year journey was only just beginning.
With Troy in ashes, Odysseus and his fleet of 12 ships set sail for Ithaca. Their hearts were high, filled with the promise of home, family, and peace. They were veterans, hardened by war, and they believed the worst was behind them. They were wrong. Their journey home would not be a simple voyage, it would be a gauntlet, a series of trials set by vengeful gods and ancient, hungry powers. Their first stop, after being blown off course, was the land of the Cyclones. Flush with their victory at Troy, Odysseus's men decided to raid the city. They plundered and celebrated, ignoring their king's command to return to the ships. It was a costly mistake. The Cyclones regrouped, counterattacked, and drove the Greeks back to the sea, but not before many of Odysseus's men had fallen. It was a bitter first lesson. The war was over, but the world was still a dangerous place. A terrible storm, sent by the gods they had offended, then battered their fleet for 9 days. On the 10th, they washed ashore in the land of the Lotus Eaters. This land seemed a paradise. The natives were gentle, peaceful, and offered the weary sailors their most precious food, the honey-sweet lotus flower. But this paradise was a trap. Those who ate the flower were overwhelmed by a blissful apathy. They forgot their homes, their families, their pasts. They forgot their very names, wanting only to stay on the island and eat the lotus forever. Odysseus had to physically drag his weeping, forgetful men back to the ships and tie them to the masts, setting sail while their comrades begged to be left behind in their dreamlike state. Their next landfall was the most terrifying yet. It was the island of the Cyclopes, giant, one-eyed shepherds who lived without laws, without community, and without mercy. Driven by hunger, Odysseus and 12 of his men entered a large cave, finding it full of cheese and sheep. They waited for the owner, hoping to receive a guest's gift, a sacred tradition in the Greek world. The owner who returned was Polyphemus, a son of the sea god Poseidon. He was a monster. Seeing the men, he rolled a stone across the cave mouth, a stone so large 24 horses couldn't move it. He trapped them. When Odysseus pleaded for hospitality in the name of Zeus, the Cyclops laughed. He seized 2 of the men, smashed them against the rocks, and ate them raw. Odysseus was trapped in the dark, his intellect seemingly powerless against such brute force. He knew he couldn't kill the giant, or they would all be trapped in the cave forever by the stone. He had to outsmart him. The next day, the Cyclops ate 2 more men. That evening, Odysseus offered the giant the strong, uncut wine he had brought from his ship. Polyphemus, who had never tasted wine, drank it greedily. He asked Odysseus his name. "My name," the clever king replied, "is Nobody. Nobody. That is what my mother and father call me." The Cyclops laughed. "Then my gift to you, Nobody, is that I will eat you last." He then fell into a drunken, heavy sleep. This was the moment. Odysseus and his men had taken the giant's club, a massive olive wood staff the size of a ship's mast, and sharpened its point in the fire. Now, with all their remaining strength, they lifted the red-hot stake and plunged it deep into the monster's single eye. Polyphemus awoke with a deafening roar, tearing the stake out. He was blinded, enraged, and in agony. He cried out to his brother Cyclops on the island for help. "What is wrong, Polyphemus? Who is hurting you?" they shouted from outside. "Nobody is hurting me! Nobody is killing me!" "Well," his brothers shouted back, "if nobody is hurting you, then it must be a sickness from the gods. You must pray to your father Poseidon." And they went back to their beds. Odysseus's trick had worked, but they still had to escape the cave. The next morning, the blind giant, still moaning in pain, rolled back the stone to let his sheep out to pasture, his great hands feeling the back of every animal to ensure no man was riding one. Odysseus had one last trick. He lashed his men to the undersides of the great rams, 3 to a group. He himself clung to the thick, shaggy fleece of the largest ram. As the great ram passed, Polyphemus stroked its back, wondering why his favorite animal was lagging. He didn't feel the man clinging beneath. Odysseus and his men made it to their ship, but here, the hero's one great flaw, his hubris, his pride, got the better of him. As they sailed away, he couldn't resist taunting the blinded giant. "Cyclops!" he shouted. "If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, King of Ithaca." It was a terrible, prideful mistake. Polyphemus, hearing the name, fell to his knees and prayed to his father Poseidon, god of the sea. He prayed that Odysseus would never see his home again, and if he was fated to return, let him return late, alone, in a stranger's ship, to find a world of trouble in his own house. Poseidon heard his son's prayer, and from that moment on, the god of the sea became Odysseus's relentless enemy. The voyage was no longer just a journey, it was now a curse. The fleet sailed on, their numbers dwindling. They reached the island of Circe, a beautiful but dangerous sorceress. She turned half of Odysseus's men into pigs, trapping them in her enchanted halls. With the help of the god Hermes, Odysseus resisted her magic and won her respect, forcing her to turn his men back. But Circe's island was another trap, a softer one. She became his lover, and he and his men stayed there for an entire year, feasting and drinking, forgetting Ithaca once more. When they finally remembered their goal, Circe gave them grave news. To find his way home, Odysseus could not sail forward. He had to sail to the edge of the world, to the land of the dead, and consult the ghost of the blind prophet, Treacherous.
The journey to the underworld was a voyage of pure dread. Odysseus and his men sailed to the dark land of the Sirens, where the sun never shines. There, as Circe instructed, he performed a ritual, sacrificing a ram and an ewe. The dark blood pooled in a trench, and the shades of the dead swarmed up from the gloom, hungry for a taste of life. This was perhaps Odysseus's darkest trial. He had to hold back the ghosts with his sword, even the ghost of his own mother, Anticlea, who had died of a broken heart, waiting for his return. He wept, but he held her back until the prophet Tiresias arrived. The prophet drank the blood and gave his prophecy. He confirmed Poseidon's rage. He warned Odysseus of one final, crucial test, the island of Thrinocia, where the sacred cattle of the sun god, Helios, grazed. "Do not harm the cattle," Tiresias warned. "If you or your men touch them, you will see your ship and your comrades destroyed. You will return home, but you will return late and alone." His task complete, Odysseus allowed his mother to drink. She told him of the chaos in his home, his wife, Penelope, besieged by arrogant suitors who were eating through his wealth, and his son, Telemachus, a man now, powerless to stop them. The news gave Odysseus a new, desperate urgency. He also spoke with his fallen comrades from Troy, Agamemnon, who warned him to trust no one, and Achilles, who famously said he would rather be a poor farmer's servant on earth than a king among the dead. Hardened by this knowledge, Odysseus returned to Circe's island and then set sail once more. His trials were far from over. Circe had warned him of the Sirens, whose enchanting song lured sailors to their deaths, crashing their ships on the rocks. Odysseus, ever curious, ordered his men to fill their own ears with beeswax so they could not hear. But he had himself tied tightly to the ship's mast. "Do not untie me," he commanded, "no matter how much I beg." As they passed the island, the siren's song filled the air. It was beautiful, and it promised him wisdom, glory, and rest. Odysseus's heart broke with longing. He screamed, pleaded, and strained against the ropes, begging his men to set him free. They only rowed harder, their faces blank and deaf to the sound. He became the only man to hear the song of the Sirens and live to tell the tale. No sooner had they passed the Sirens than they faced an impossible choice. They had to navigate a narrow strait flanked by two terrible monsters. On one side was Charybdis, a living whirlpool that sucked down the sea and everything in it 3 times a day. On the other was Scylla, a 6-headed monster who lived in a cliffside cave, snatching sailors from the decks of passing ships. Circe's advice was grim. "It is better to lose 6 men than your whole ship." Odysseus steered his ship towards Scylla's cliff. As Charybdis began to inhale the sea, the crew stared in terror. At that moment, Scylla struck. Her long, snake-like necks darted down, and 6 of his best men were plucked from the deck. Odysseus heard their screams as they were lifted into the air, calling his name one last time. He would later say it was the most pitiful thing he had ever seen. He and his remaining crew, broken and grieving, finally washed ashore on the island of the sun god, Helios. The prophecy of Tiresias echoed in Odysseus's mind. He made his men swear a solemn oath not to touch the sacred cattle. But they were trapped on the island for a month by terrible storms. Their food ran out. They were starving. One day, while Odysseus was inland praying to the gods for deliverance, he fell asleep. It was a fatal sleep. His men, led by the mutinous Eurylochus, decided that starvation was a worse death than angering a god. They rounded up the best of Helios's cattle, slaughtered them, and feasted. When Odysseus awoke and smelt the meat, he knew they were doomed. Helios was enraged. He demanded justice from Zeus. As soon as the Greeks set sail, Zeus, king of the gods, hurled a single, devastating thunderbolt. The ship was obliterated. All of Odysseus's men, his comrades from 10 years of war and 10 years of wandering, were lost to the sea. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to a piece of the broken mast. For 9 days he drifted alone, at the mercy of the gods. He was pulled back towards Charybdis, surviving only by clinging to the roots of a fig tree as the whirlpool swallowed his raft, waiting for it to be spat back up. Finally, he washed ashore on the island of Ogygia. He was found by the beautiful nymph Calypso. Here his journey stalled. Calypso fell in love with the broken hero and kept him on her island, a prisoner in paradise, for 7 years. She offered him everything: comfort, luxury, even immortality. But Odysseus, sitting on the beach, looking out at the sea, wept every day. He did not want to be an immortal god. He wanted to be a mortal husband and father. He wanted to go home. After 20 years away from home, 10 at war, 10 at sea, the gods on Olympus finally took pity on him. Zeus sent Hermes to order Calypso to release him. Heartbroken, she helped him build a raft, and Odysseus set sail for the last time. But Poseidon had one last storm for him. The sea god shattered his raft, and Odysseus washed up naked and half dead on the shores of Phaeacia. He was found by the princess Nausea and taken to the court of her father, King Alcinous. It is here at this banquet that Odysseus finally tells his story, the entire epic tale that we have just heard. Moved by his suffering, the Phaeacians gave him a ship laden with gifts, and their sailors rowed him home, delivering him to the shores of Ithaca while he slept. When he awoke, he did not recognize his own homeland. 20 years had passed. He was a stranger. But this was the final test. He returned to his own palace, disguised as an old beggar, his mind still sharp. He saw the state of his home, 100 over-arrogant suitors living in his halls, eating his food, drinking his wine, and demanding his wife Penelope choose one of them as a new husband. With the help of his now-grown son Telemachus and the goddess Athena, the man of cunning planned his final terrible gambit. Penelope, who had cleverly held off the suitors for years, announced a contest. She would marry any man who could string her husband's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. The suitors, all of them strong, tried and failed. They couldn't even bend the bow. The beggar, Odysseus, asked for a turn. The suitors mocked him, but Telemachus insisted. Odysseus picked up the bow. He handled it as a musician handles a lyre, stringing it with ease. He plucked the string, and it sang. He then took an arrow, and without even rising from his seat, sent it perfectly through all 12 axes. The hall fell silent. He shed his rags. "The contest is over," he said. "Now it is time for another." With his son at his side, and with the blessing of the gods, Odysseus, the warrior of Troy, unleashed his reckoning upon the men who had defiled his home. The doors were locked. The suitors were unarmed. The man of intellect, who had waited 20 years for this moment, proved he was also a man of war. After the dust settled, Odysseus finally was reunited with his wife Penelope, who, in a final test of his identity, proved just as clever as he was. Odysseus the Wanderer was home. His journey was over. He was no longer just a king, or a general, or a survivor. He was a legend, a symbol of human endurance, of the power of the mind, and of the inescapable primal pull of home.
What topic do you want us to cover next? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to help us by liking, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you for joining us on Mythic Mundi. Until next time, may your own journeys be filled with wonder.